Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Gravitas. With me is Jaitley and we'll be taking you through the next 2 hours to examine what happened to the budget. Arun Jaitley, the fourth budget that he presented, the Prime Minister described the Union budget as futuristic, driven with the single aim of improving the dreams of every section of society, including especially the poor, farmers and the underprivileged, while focusing on job creation, transparency and rural development.
Now, as many of you would be aware, the Sensex rose nearly 500 points on the budget announcement, responding, it would seem, to the focus, the fiscal discipline and clarity on FPI taxation. Financial and reality stocks powered the rise. The finance minister's plans to infuse 10,000 crore rupees into the public sector banks and keep unchanged the long-term and short-term capital gains tax on the capital markets was yet another positive move of the Union budget FY18.
We analyze all these and other issues with a panel of experts. Amarjeet Singh of KPMG, Vikrant Suri of Coinmen, and Kamal Abrol of PwC, who joins us here in the studio. We'll be joined by SD Majumdar in a while. We will break down the budget looking at specific sectors, what impact the budget could have on these sectors, and what can we expect going forward.
Now, to begin with, let's take a quick look at personal taxes. What do Arun Jaitley's proposals add up to you and me? We have this report. Take a look.
No taxes levied on income up to rupees 2.5 lakhs, so no changes there. The tax slabs of rupees 2.5 lakh and rupees 5 lakh have seen a reduction from 10% to 5%. This would bring an overall tax benefit of rupees 12,875 for individuals earning more than 5 lakh. Also, a surcharge of 10% has been levied on all individuals earning between 50 lakh and 1 crore rupees. According to the figures given in the budget speech, 1.95 lakh people pay taxes in the brackets of rupees 2.5 lakh and rupees 5 lakh. Will this tax base increase after the recent tax reduction? Will we become a more tax-compliant society? Vrinda Agarwal with Padma Rao, WION, New Delhi.
That was all about personal taxation. Let's look at what the budget had for corporates. The finance minister has cut the corporate tax for small companies to 25%. The idea is to make these companies more competitive. And these are the medium and the companies which are small and medium, under 50 crores. The question going forward is, how is personal tax being impacted? Let me turn to our guest, Kamal Abrol. You are with PwC and you look after taxation and regulatory. Now, obviously there has been changes in the tax bracket, especially when we look at personal tax. So let's say I'm an individual who makes between 0 to 5 lakhs, and there's another individual who makes between 5 and 20 lakhs, and then there's somebody between 20 and 50 and then beyond. How has this budget changed anything for me?
So this budget generally changes the slab rate for the taxation between 2,50,000 to 5 lakh of rupees. The tax rate gets reduced from 10% to 5%. If you do the overall analysis of it, the person who is earning anything less than 50 lakhs would be benefited by it. Because of the surcharge that has been imposed on the income exceeding 50 lakhs till the income of 1 crore, that's a new surcharge of 10% that has been imposed. That would increase their tax liability. For the people earning more than 1 crore, there was already a surcharge and they will also benefit by it. So to cut the long story short, people who are in the bracket of 50 lakhs to 1 crore of income, they are adversely impacted by it, but everyone else enjoys the benefit of it.
And how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with the direct taxation regime that is now kicked in, with the halving of the taxation for the lower income bracket as well?
I think he could have probably done more, but given the fact that there were too many things to be dealt with, the focus on the rural infrastructure and the economy, from that perspective, probably he has tried to do some sort of a balancing act by reducing the tax for the people who earn till 5 lakhs and then probably to some extent collecting the portion of the taxes from people who earn more than 50 lakhs.
But it's a very small section of the population that probably makes 50 lakhs and over, right?
That's right. In his budget speech, he did allude to the fact that there is 1.72 lakhs of taxpayers who pay anything more than that. So from that perspective, the tax liability should not bother too much to that class who is earning more than 50 lakhs to a crore of rupees. It's a welcome step for the middle class.
Sure. Joining us also is Vikrant Suri of Coinmen. Vikrant, it is believed that reduction in income tax was probably a good idea for many. The compliance will probably exceed than what it was happening before. Also, the tax slab for the rich, so to say, anybody who makes more than 50 lakhs a year. Do you think this is going to have a positive impact on the economy?
See, if you really see, the spending power is not really going to increase. The expectations was quite a lot, post demonetization. Everybody thought that, the slabs are going to be pushed and the rates are going to slashed. The industry expected the slabs to go, the 10% slab to be till 10 lakhs and beyond that 20% till 20 lakhs and above that 30%. So however, given all that, there hasn't been any drastic, or I would say, there are no freebies given by the government. So there's a marginal relief, I would say, 12,500 to be precise. I mean, that's something which has been given. However, if you're above 50 lakhs, that doesn't really count.
So if we were looking at an overall picture, give us a sense, what was the expectation from this budget when we were looking at the higher slabs, and what was the expectation in the lower slabs, and how off this is from what everybody was expecting out of this?
Yeah, like I just told you that, everybody thought that the slab is going to be, the zero slab is going to be till 5 lakhs, and then after 5 lakhs till 10 lakhs, they were expecting a 10% on that, another 20% till 20 lakhs, and above that will be 30%. So completely, I mean, this was basically to, clear the demonetization effect. So people thought that because they've been suffered, so, that's the kind of goodies which we're going to get. However, the finance minister did not choose that. I mean, he really looked at more of physical prudence and, making the budget more transparent, more accountability. So if you see overall, it's going to, affect the economy in a good way in like another 2 to 3 years.
Right. Mr. Suri, also the finance minister talked about low tax compliance in the country and how in the last year, where 2 crore people travelled abroad, only 76 lakh individuals filed income tax of about 5 lakhs. Do you believe this is the root cause? What is really the root cause of this? And has the tax base really increased in this country as well?
See, increasing, I mean, giving a tax break of 5 lakhs. So that's a welcoming step. People are going to start complying, saying that we will not pay tax. However, once you're registered with the tax department, your PAN is there, everything is there. They may catch you in whatever ways. I mean, that's a very, very good step of increasing the tax base. That's what the government wants.
Kamal, there has also been some relief on the capital, gains front. Mm-hmm. Explain to us what is the implication on an average Indian on this about capital gains.
So when we talk about the capital gains, one of the relief that he has given is on the property. You have 2 tax rate brackets for the capital gain. One is the short term and one is the long term. In long term, you are taxed at a lower rate as compared to the short term. And the time period that was reckoned for classifying as an asset, which could be sold and then you get a long term capital gain, was 36 months. That period of 36 months gets reduced to a period of 24 months. So that from 3 years to 2 years. So if people are thinking about flipping the property and moving into a new property, they would have to pay less of a capital gain if they own that property for a period of 2 years. So to that extent, real estate sector and people should be happy with it.
Even as far as the capital gains tax is concerned on the stock markets as well, it was almost like the investors were dodging some sort of a bullet, because there was an indication earlier in the past about changing the capital gains tax on a long-term hold, but that change really never came in the budget really.
Yeah, so to some extent what he has done is equated the unlisted shares and then the property when we talk about the period of 2 years. So to that extent he has equated that from the shares when we talk about, but other than that the change that you are talking about, that hasn't really come.
So I have a question in terms of, let's say there's an individual with 2 properties and he's held the property for more than 24 months. And if he makes profit on it, it will be considered long term and they won't have to pay taxes on it.
They would have to pay taxes at a lower rate.
At a lower rate. Beyond that, if you hold properties and you keep them empty, you will still have to pay some tax for keeping those properties empty. There was that announcement as well today. That means if it's not rented or it's not utilized by yourself, right?
That's a different section. So when we talk about you hold the properties, those properties which you hold, you pay a tax and the income is classified as income from house property. So to that extent, the income from house property classification, which you told that the builders who were holding this stock in trade, and they were classifying it as income from house property. So the way he has put forth is that he is giving them a relief of a period of 1 year to liquidate that property, and therefore in the first year they won't have to pay income from house property. That's a different from capital gains,
sure.
But really one needs to go and see as to how many builders were actually paying tax on that when we talk about the proper fact that those properties were lying vacant.
Lastly, on the taxation front, we're going to go over to Vikrant Suri, who's standing by. Now, Vikrant, there has been a relief to the common man by way of increasing the range of investments allowed as deduction from taxable income in the past. Were you looking for the same this year, or are you satisfied with this being unchanged at all?
Of course, I mean, you know, the whole messaging around by everyone is just that there has been no relief. So, you know, to increase the spending part, of course, you had to give all these kind of exemptions. So everybody does that. So today, 1,50,000 is not much. Everybody invests more than that. So under Section 80C, which I'm talking about. So if that amount would have got increased, I'm sure that there would have been a lot of tax effect.
Well, let's look at what the budget had for corporates. The finance minister has cut the corporate tax for small companies to 25%. The idea is to make these companies more competitive vis-a-vis their competitors in Asia. But the concession has not been extended to the corporate biggies. There's been some disappointment there. Let's look at this report.
There will be no tax in converting preference shares to equity shares. The industry had been demanding clarity on this law for a very long time, and this announcement will improve the ease of doing business in India. Income tax for small and medium enterprises with annual turnover of up to 50 crore rupees has been reduced to 25% from the current 30%, but there is no change in tax rate of other corporates. Again this year, the corporates have not received any major tax incentives from the government. Indeed, the minimum alternate tax credit will be allowed for 15 years, but it is at best a cosmetic change with not much impact on the companies. It seems that no serious step has been taken to improve the ease of doing business in India, and in that sense, corporates may be disappointed with Arun Jaitley's latest budget. With Brinda Agarwal in Delhi, Sana Khan for WION.
Now, to understand how this change has affected, you know, companies worldwide, there's been a downturn worldwide. In some ways, companies have been impacted by this. Explain to us what is the impact like, and in the larger global scenario, does this put Indian companies ahead? Does this put them behind?
So if we look at a broader framework, the finance minister earlier on in his first budget had laid down a roadmap wherein he had said that he would be reducing the corporate tax rate from 30 to 25%. For the small companies, he has achieved that ambition of reducing for 30 to 25%. But still the biggies, those who have to pay a significant amount of taxes, have yet been left out. And I think if we were to draw a parallel to it as to what the other countries in the West, developed economies are doing it, US is talking about, President Trump is talking about reducing the tax rate directly from 35 to 15%. UK has been reducing the tax rate of late. So from that perspective, a serious thought needs to be given to there, because if the Indian companies are paying around about 34%, and the multinationals or the big Indian giants are paying those 34, 35%, then to that extent, you lose some sort of an advantage.
So Rohit, even the companies with a higher market capitalization now will end up paying the same tax that they were paying earlier, really, which is not auguring down well at a time when America and UK are more insular in terms of their taxation regime. Now, there has also been a long pending demand, and we're going to go over to Mr. Suri, who's standing by with us. Now, the long pending demand has been for a change in the minimum alternate tax structure, or the MAT, as they popularly call it. However, there's been no tax reduction done on this particular front. Do you think that the extension given by the finance minister for the utilization of the minimum alternate taxation credit is a first step towards the relief, or is it just a window dressing that the finance ministry is providing?
See, before I answer the MAT question, I have a point on the reduction in the corporate tax. Sure. So if you see, this has just been given to corporates, as in companies which are registered. Now, we have another form which is called as Limited Liability Partnership, LLP. So that's another very well, we've seen a lot of foreign companies and a lot of FDI coming into the LLPs. So there they have not given this reduced rate. I mean, that is something which they should have given it across the table, not just restricting it to companies. So that is something which they should have done.
So, just to
go... so now coming to MAT, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Suri, you were talking about MAT.
No, it's, yeah.
Okay. So just...
Yeah, so on the MAT, see, there's a window definitely which has been increased, and it all depends upon, because see, like in the startups, there are, there is a gestation period. So you may have a lot of huge losses, and then suddenly you turn into profits. And then in that case, obviously your MAT, if you have a long time, I mean, MAT is there, you can pay the MAT and later they can be adjusted when you actually earn profit. So it's a good move.
The MSME sector has seen some relief by the reduction of income tax by 5%. However, the overall corporate tax remains at 30%. What impact do you see on the industrial growth of this reduction? Is the limit of 50 crore turnover to the avail a relief to, and is it a justified move?
No, it's a justified move. It's a very, very good move. The only point what I'm trying to make is that there's a service sector which is growing very rapidly. So even they come under the, under the ambit of less than 50 crore. But however, no relief has been given there.
Right, absolutely. One of the, we were looking at some of the old texts of India, and they said any tax above 15% is almost illegal for a king to even put in place. So looking at the way the structures around the world, China, if your personal income tax is about 10%. You go to many other countries in the world, the taxation structure is really low. So when they talk about compliance and people filing taxes so that there is compliance, but the tax structure is so high, you think people will still pay tax? Because a lot of people turn around and say, the tax is too high and I don't get enough out of what I pay for tax.
So I think when we look at India, the tax rate appears to be moderate. We talk about China. In China, there are multiple slabs, and then it goes to the level of say 30 or 40%. So broadly, the tax rates in India are moderate. But I think the second part of the question that you pointed out, that are we getting enough in return for the taxes that we are paying? I think that's the important question. And generally, the people who are paying taxes, the taxpayers have the feeling that they don't get enough in lieu of the taxes that they pay. That's one thing that we carry. Secondly, I personally believe that when we talk about the tax rate in India is moderate, but as Finance Minister himself said, that we are a nation who loves tax evasion and we do not do a tax compliance. We are a non-compliant tax nation. Assuming everyone who is earning that level of income was to pay the taxes, I'm sure the tax rate should come down.
On the back of that, the biggest question also is the fiscal deficit target for FY18 has been pegged to be 3.2% and 3% for the next 3 years going forward as well. With such prudence that they've shown on the taxation front, do you think we're going to be able to match up to these targets? Do you think we're way off what we would actually end up achieving and implementing the reforms after that? Do you think this target would be able to be achieved by the Finance Minister?
I think it is commendable that he has been able to live up with the expectation. He was targeting 3 and he has been able to do at 3.2%. And a clear roadmap has been laid down for the next year for 3%. Given the fact that he has increased his spending on the rural areas and he has increased his spending on the infrastructure sector, I think he deserves a pat on the back if he's able to do that 3.2%.
The Finance Minister talked about making India a manufacturing hub. What do you think, Mr. Suri? Will we see any concrete steps being taken in this direction in this budget which ensure the same?
See, as far as the budget is concerned, there hasn't been any incentive or any exemption which could be extended to a manufacturing undertaking. So largely, if you see, the roadmap is clear that they want to reduce the tax rates and wipe up all the exemptions. So, maybe they have indirect tax exemptions, maybe if
Sure. So, yeah. Mr. Suri, so, if we were to, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So, if we were to clearly see where this is going forward. Now, the larger companies, taxation not impacted. Small and medium companies,
right,
they get impacted. What about the startups? Was that addressed here at all? Because I know there have been some changes from, in the 7 years, they have to file taxes only for 3 years, down from 5 years. Explain that a bit to us.
Yeah, to startups, of course, they have given some incentives up there. Hello?
We can hear you, Mr. Suri. Please go on.
Yeah. Hello? Yeah.
Right.
So I'm saying that startups, of course, they've given some exemptions, but I need to figure out in details. I wouldn't really touch that aspect.
Sure. I think what has happened here is that there has been a massive change in the way startups obviously are going to be promoted. Mr. Abrol, explain to us what are the changes that have been made which will help smaller companies that start out afresh today. Certainly an economy where we're going to see a lot of changes, people coming in with fresh venture capitalists trying to promote companies, and certainly that's a goal for India to create the entrepreneurship.
So on the startup front, there have been two predominant changes that have been made. One is there is a regulation under the domestic tax laws, which is the Indian Income Tax Act, which talks about the fact if there is a change in shareholding exceeding a specified percentage, then you lose the benefit of those losses. Now, startups falling in a particular category have been excluded from this loss of losses, if I was to say that. So they fall outside the ambit of this provision. Secondly, they were allowed a tax exemption of their profits in a block of, for 3 years in a block of 5 years, and that 5 years has got extended to 7 years. That's predominantly when we talk about the startups, wherein the changes have been made.
Great. We will continue talking more about the budget. We've looked at personal tax, we've looked at some corporate tax, but stay with us because we're going to take you through different sectors. Very important to kind of understand what kind of an impact this has had on the overall economy, how it's impacted your pocket and what has been done in this budget for making sure that India gets pushed ahead. And sometimes the impact is directly on you. We will try and explain to you what the impact has been. Stay with us beyond the break. We will keep broadcasting till 10 p.m., breaking down this budget for you.
Thank you so much for staying with us right here on WION World is One News, and welcome back. You're watching this special edition of Gravitas, where we break down the budget with a panel of experts. And we'd also like to thank Mr. Vikrant Suri, who just joined us a little while back to talk to us about taxation as well.
Joining us in the studio is Amarjeet. He is with KPMG. You work on e-commerce, startup and tax and advisory. Also with us is Kamal Abrol. He's been talking to us about personal tax and corporate tax, and he'll continue to stay with us in studio. Let's start with the startups. What is the kind of impact we will see based on the budgets and the moves that have been made?
See, the startup ecosystem, as we see, there are 3 to 4 components. One is the company itself, the entrepreneurship, etc. Then the people who are investing into it. The main thing which was supposed to be addressed was, if I have done a startup and if I'm started making some income or I'm incurring losses, then in that particular case, till what time is a tax holiday available to me? Earlier, the tax holiday was allowed 3 out of 5 years. And now what we see, it has been said that now it's allowed between 3 out of 7 years. So this particular move will ensure, because the startups in the initial year incur losses, so by allowing me to choose 3 out of 7 years, I'll have the ability to actually take the benefit of this particular provision, otherwise which was not almost available to me. Second thing which was important, I think, was in terms of there's a continuous dilution which happens of a promoter's stake in a startup. He keeps on raising funds round A, B, C, D, and in this entire process, some of the losses which he's incurred are never available to him for set off against profits in future, because there is an anti-abuse provision under the law which says that in case there is a change of shareholding to the extent of 51%, the set of losses which have been incurred cannot be set off against the profit. So we had been asking the government that this needs to be diluted for the purposes of startups. And the FM in his speech and as well as under the law has made this change. And this is the only exception I have seen which has been allowed in such a long history of income tax.
Absolutely. And in today's budget speech, there were certain incentives announced for startups. Let's take a look at what those were and what they meant to the startup ecosystem.
The startup companies have now been given tax exemption in 3 out of 7 years against the earlier 3 out of 5 years. This means that out of 7 years, the startups can identify in which of the 3 years they would like to pay taxes. Also, there has been a demand of the startup industry to allow their losses to be carried forward, even if the shareholding of the company changes. This is a long-term demand of the industry, as with new rounds of funding, the shareholding changes. But are these benefits mostly for the startups under the Startup India scheme? With Brinda Agarwal, this is Jessica Taneja for WION.
Promotion of startups has been one of the key focuses of the government. But we don't see any major relief coming to the sector from this budget. Kamal, what are your thoughts on this whole area?
I think given the fact as to the entrepreneurial activity that's going on currently in India, startups really need much more than that. I'm not sure how many startups would actually be in a position to avail the benefit of the tax holiday that he has given when he talks about a period of a tax holiday of 3 years out of a block of 7 years. When we talk about the fact they are initially into losses, they can recoup those losses, and if there isn't dilution, they can continue to set off those losses. So from that perspective, I think the focus on startups, in my personal view, should be more on the ease of doing business in India and how can they make more money out of it, rather than more on the tax side of it.
All right, Amarjeet, there has also been reports that tax exemptions which were promised to the startups and even unicorn startups for that matter have been difficult to avail. After this budget, do you think the lay of the land and the scenario change on that front?
I don't think so, because if I just look at the typical ecosystem of startups, the real examples in front of us are companies like Flipkart and Ola and some of the other companies. And what we find that they have been in existence for a few years and they are still heavily into losses. So as Kamal was rightly saying, that looking at the Indian economic situation and the way startups struggle to get into road to profitability, these exemptions, even when given, they might not be of full use to a typical startup. But having said that, it's a good start. I'm just saying, not only that, I think if I just look at, there's a conflict in the definition of startup as well as the exemption itself. It says you remain a startup only in the first 5 years when you've been incorporated, and certainly you talk about 3 out of 7 years. Again, in the maybe 6th year, it might not qualify as a startup itself.
All, yeah.
So I think the government is trying hard. But I think somewhere the policy has to come together, including the issue of ease of doing business, doing the winding up very quickly. So there are things which are still pending.
Perhaps the government still needs to take a cue from what really happened in Silicon Valley and maybe adapt that in the next budget to come, of course.
Absolutely. There are lots of learnings. We are the third biggest setup in which startups are coming up after US and UK.
Right.
So we are doing something right in terms of entrepreneurial talent, but I think in terms of ecosystem, there are a lot more things can be done.
All right, stay with us on that thought. We're going to come back to you to discuss taxation in much detail. Now, the Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley, today was silent on the Goods and Services Tax, GST. Did not really come in as a surprise in his budget speech. Is this an indication that while the rollout of the GST is for July 1st is on track, he really did not want to upset anyone while the negotiations are still on? As far as the indirect taxes are concerned, there have not been any major changes in the excise tax and the service tax as well. And there are no big-ticket announcements in terms of direct taxation as well. It seems status quo has been maintained on this particular front.
The Doing Business report of the World Bank, World Investment Report 2000.
Mr. S.D. Majumdar, former CBEC chairman, is also joining us on this show tonight. Welcome, Mr. Majumdar. We've been hearing about the centre trying to align the current tax regime with the forthcoming GST regime. Where the reflections in today's budget on that account, do you see there's a better sense on what's going on there? Do you, Mr. Majumdar is not here with us, can you see any alignment on what's been done on taxation front, and going forward, when the GST regime kicks in, will there be an easy transfer to that regime?
So I think what we were expecting is that between April to June period, these 3-4 months of transition, we might see there might be increase in service tax rate, so that when the transition goes to the median rate of 18%, there is a very clear transition which can happen. Similarly, we were looking at some other rate hikes just to move into a GST situation. However, this was not only important from a transition perspective, even from a revenue collection perspective, because this 3 months, if the rate is lower compared to what is going to come in GST, then in that particular case, the 50,000 crores, etc., what has been promised by the finance minister to be given to the state, then these 2-3 months of loss, how will you make it up?
Sure.
So there were expectations, but it seems that the government has the sanity has prevailed and no rate increases have been done.
So what is your sense on the GST front really? Earlier we heard that it will be rolling out by 1st April, then we heard that it's going to be further pushed in. Now finally we know that on 1st of July perhaps the GST will roll out. The GST consensus is not yet through as far as the council is concerned in terms of the classification of the tax brackets and what goods are classified under which tax bracket has also not been given any kind of clarity. The other logjam that we are seeing on the GST front is the central government's payout to the state governments of 50,000 crore rupees. What is your sense on how this entire issue of GST, which is hanging fire for the longest time, is going to be panning out? We also, of course, have the guard, which probably the anti-avoidance rule also sets in now.
Yeah, as far as GST is concerned, I think it's almost a done deal, because today also the finance minister clearly said that we have consensus on almost all the items as far as GST is concerned. I think the last item which we always talked about was the control part, I think, which has also been addressed now. I think as far as now the classification is concerned, there is a clear methodology which had been laid very clearly as to which thing which will go into which bracket. There might be a little bit of tinkering which will be done based upon some state requests, but I don't think that is going to be a major challenge going forward now. So GST is, I think, happening in a proper fashion. I don't see any impediments now.
Sure. Amarjeet, Mr. S.D. Majumdar is now back on with us. He was the former CBSE chairman. Explain to us, Mr. Majumdar, we've been hearing about the centre trying to align the current tax regime with the forthcoming GST regime. Are there any reflections in today's budget on that account? Do you see any alignment happening there?
Yes, as the previous speaker, hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go on.
Was saying that today Finance Minister has very clearly he has said that the GST is going to be rolled out. Most of the hurdles have been over. And now, what are the things pending? These are, first of all, is the GST laws, CGST law for the implementation of CGST, central GST, and the IGST law, that is the integrated GST for the interstate movement. That has to be placed in the parliament and get it cleared. And based on the draft model GST law, which is more or less finalized except one or two areas. And the other thing is that after this is done, the respective state assemblies will be handling the state GST bills to be placed by the respective state governments. So I don't think that the pending issues are, one is that after apart from that, which was mentioned just by the previous speaker, that the rates of duty has been finalized, that it will be 5%. A broad idea has been given that 5% would be for items which are of use by the poor people. Then the 12% will be for the items to be for use by the common man, and 18% will be the standard rate. And for demerit goods, aerated water, cigarette, etc., it will be 28%. Now, but what is yet to be decided is which item will go, which are the goods which will go fit in these four categories, and for that the discussion is going on. And the next one, which is still pending, is right now means just before today's budget, central excise exemptions were more than 350, and whereas for the state VAT, the exemptions are about 98. Now, in GST regime, both the central list and the state list will be common, same. So they are working on that, and on that basis, they will prepare a common list, and obviously it will be somewhere in between 98 and 350. It can't be that long a list. It can't be that short a list either. So this work is also pending.
Mr.
Now,
Majum,
with reference to today's budget, I would like to say one thing. Sorry?
Go on.
I would like to say one point, that I had expected the finance minister to give some direction to show that he is converging the excise and service tax laws and the provisions is converging towards the GST. And that means he could have reduced the number of exemptions. He could have given some idea how what are the commodities which will go on the lowest rate.
Right.
I'm not saying that the lowest rate would be 5% in the current regime, because the tax base is much lower.
Sure.
But some indication could have been given, so the taxpayers are prepared that this item will be the 5%, this item will be the 12%.
Right. So you're talking about the classification as far as the four tax brackets are concerned, in terms of the two main tax bracket and the two outliers, making it four tax brackets altogether. Now, this whole exercise was meant to increase the ease of doing business in India and the perception of India to the rest of the world as to how we are easily conducive to transact business. Do you think this perception has come through because there's also an issue of cross-empowerment, and there is also the issue of dual control between the state and the center government, which is still hanging fire? How do you think the world is perceiving India post the GST rollout?
No, I tell you, the dual control, it was originally international best practice. Most of the countries, it is that the center collects the tax for both the center as well as the states, and on some economic survey about the consumption index, on that basis, the shares of different states are predetermined, and accordingly the revenue, the state share is distributed. Now that is a very easy process, but in India we did not adopt that because we didn't want to do away with the fiscal autonomy of the states. So that's why it's a unique model that India is having, where both center and states will have concurrent power and dual control on that. So it was thought from the beginning that it will be 50-50. That means 50% of the work will be the center, 50% will be the states.
Sure, Mr. Majumdar.
Now,
very
the
good
question
point
is that
there.
how will this be determined? But one thing is very clear, that one thing is very clear, that in order to have the ease of doing business, so far as the taxpayer is concerned, he will only have interface with only one authority. So in a computerized program, it will be predetermined which taxpayer will go to the center and which will go to the state.
As far as
so
the
that
GST is concerned.
But now what the problem has been created, the problem is...
Yeah, you're talking about the single window clearance as far as the GST concerned, and very well said, Mr. Majumdar.
90%.
Sure. You're talking about the single window clearance system, and point very well taken, Mr. Majumdar. Thank you so much for joining us on this telecast. Now, as far as the markets are concerned, it was a bull's day out as far as the Indian markets were concerned. The markets opened flat. In other words, they did not see a fair bit of an upsurge at the start of the finance minister's speech. There was a conspicuous share on the bourses as well as the finance minister started speaking on the benchmark Indian indices as well. As far as the Nifty is concerned, it crossed the 8,700 mark and closed up 1.8% in today's intraday trading session, and the Sensex too closed up 1.85% amidst the cheer on the bourses as well. The relief rally was being witnessed in the intraday trading session today, and this was the biggest budget day gain for the Nifty in the past 12 years. Rather a very historical day as far as the Indian markets were concerned, and the markets clearly rejoiced the government's decision of no long-term capital gains tax on your shares and left the short-term capital gains tax to unchanged. This, according to most analysts and the brokerage reports that are coming in, was like a bullet being dodged, and that led to the bulls fronting the Indian markets. We're now joined by Mr. Ashish Kelkar, who's a partner in Precision Investment, who joins us on the phone line to assess what really happened on the bourses today. Good evening, Mr. Kelkar, and thank you so much for joining us on this telecast. Do you feel that the abolishment of the FIPP is indicating the ease of doing business and is helping the Indian markets as well, because there will be more thrust on the FDI going forward on the back of this move?
Good evening to all. If you look at this budget, by and large, it's a fairly balanced budget, I would say. Basically, I'm happy that the focus was maintaining on fiscal deficit, which is around at 3.2. And if you look at the expectations that we had from this budget was to enhance the tax base. Basically, we were expecting some changes in service tax and rest of the taxations. We were expecting a good rate cut in income tax. So, but if we look at the overall budget, I am happy that the pace at which the economy should develop, economy should gain the control, on the same pace this budget has been proposed.
You know, one of the big changes that we've seen this time is the FIPB. Now, FIPB was the board where you came as a foreign investor to invest in India into a business, and you went through a massive amount of bureaucracy, literally, to get clearances to be able to do business. Now, what has happened is it's all gone online. It's a single window where you'll be able to do business from, but again, all the other laws around it and how much you can invest continue to stay there, but there isn't this whole other cycle that you have to go through. Mr. Kelkar, you think that the relief on the long-term capital gains tax will augur well for the Indian market sentiment going forward?
Yes, definitely. The relief which has been given for long-term capital tax for the equities, definitely this could help us to bring in more funds to the equity markets. And basically, if we look at, there is not much which has been announced in the budget for the equity markets as such. But if I look at the medium scale businesses or small scale businesses, definitely there are good positives which have been proposed. So I think
Mr. Kelkar, please stay with us. Joining me right now is the Power Minister of the Government of India, Mr. Piyush Goyal. Welcome to the show, Mr. Goyal. Some people say this is a balanced budget. Critics say there are no big ticket announcements like the big SOPs. How would you respond to that?
Subhashji and my family go.
Mr. Goyal, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Yes, Mr. Goyal, the question is, some people say that this is a balanced budget. Critics say there are no big ticket items here. There are no big SOPs. How would you respond to that?
Mr. Rohit, the fact that this budget has maintained fiscal prudence, all the macro parameters have been respected and maintained both for last year and for the year ahead of us. The fact that without any burden on any section of society, it has had some path-breaking and transformational initiatives to spur growth, to create new opportunities for people to get jobs, to get self-employed, to do business. The fact that the small and medium enterprises, both the small traders who get digitalized and the businesses with turnover up to 50 crores in the corporate sector, have been given significant tax benefits. The fact that huge amounts have been allocated to agriculture, rural development, to infrastructure, 3.96 lakh crores in infrastructure alone, reflects that it's a growth-oriented budget. It's a budget that will give a big boost to the economy. It's a budget that is moving towards lower taxation in the entire system without causing any stress on any section of society.
Right, Mr. Goyal, there's been a lot of talk really since morning around fiscal prudence, and most analysts across the board have termed this a fiscally prudent budget as well. Do you think that the target of 3.2% for FY18 as far as the fiscal deficit is concerned is achievable, and how would the crackdown on black money and bringing more people into the tax bracket really help that cause?
Madam, very clearly, if you see our track record of the last 2 years, we have exceeded our collections on taxes from even the budgeted figures in each of the years. The direct tax, indirect tax collection has been more strictly implemented. And even in the current year, you see that both forms of taxes have shown robust growth. For the next year, the nominal GDP is expected to grow by 11.5% on the back of very low inflation. And therefore, the 15% odd increase in tax collections that have been projected are very, very reasonable, very much doable and achievable. And we have demonstrated our track record of 3 years, where each of the years we have maintained the fiscal discipline to meet the targets we set out. It was a practice in budgets before 2014 to make unreasonable calculations and budgetary estimates, and then in the revised estimate show a downward trend or downward figure. Finance Minister Mr. Jaitley in both the last 2 years' budgets has not only maintained spending at the budgeted level, in fact has exceeded spending while maintaining fiscal prudence and fiscal targets. So I think it's a matter of compliment to the Finance Minister and his wise leadership of the entire finance sector and the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, that fiscal prudence has been center stage despite a big thrust to spending for the poor, spending for the welfare of the marginalized sections of society.
Mr. Goyal, the economic survey had a few interesting suggestions. Points like salary for all or UBI were mentioned. they all don't seem to have been encompassed in this budget. Explain to us where going forward will these be seen within the budget?
Where going forward?
No, in terms of where will we see this in the upcoming budget? Will we begin talking about, pensions for all? Do you think this is what's going to happen in the future? Do you think there is provisions in this budget that can account for it?
Well, I can clearly see that. More and more of the informal economy is being encouraged to join the formal economy, what the finance minister rightly called the new normal. I think more and more people are recognizing that it pays to be honest. More and more people are understanding that with the lowering of tax rates, for example, the companies up to 50 crores will now pay 5% less tax, from 30 to 25%. You will now see that more people have a disposable income. The middle class will get about 12,500 rupees per taxpayer as additional disposable income in his hand, which will lead to more consumption spending or investment. Affordable housing has been given a big thrust, and you'll appreciate that housing has the largest multiplier effect on economic growth as well as job growth. In fact, Chandrajit Banerjee of CII in an earlier program was saying that the housing sector and infrastructure sector have an impact on 250 different sectors. Steel, cement, labor, services, everybody gets a boost. So I think this is a budget which not only gives a big thrust to growth while maintaining fiscal prudence, but also ensures directed spending to improve the lives of the poor and marginalized sections of society, improve farm productivity, give them more resources to improve the output from the farms, to get a better value for their produce, and helps women and youth of this country get a better quality of life.
You talked about farms, Mr. Goyal. There was talk about doubling the income of farmers in the next 5 years. Explain to us how that will be possible.
Well, it's an attack on several fronts to help farmers improve their income. For years, many of our farmers have been in the vortex of drought or flood at different points of time. We have in fact used Manrega funds to create more than 10 lakh ponds which will retain water for a bad day. At the same time, a big thrust has been given to the Pradhan Mantri Sinchai Yojana to encourage irrigation projects which have been stranded and stuck for several years to go towards completion. Farmers have been given the ability to borrow up to 10 lakh crores, the highest ever allocation ever, at very concessional rates of interest, which will help them invest in their fields. Fertilizer, which for years used to be a commodity always in short supply. Today there is no shortages of fertilizer. After neem coating, everybody gets adequate fertilizer. In fact, we have reduced the prices of fertilizer for the farmer. Going forward, we have focused on getting every farmer a soil health card, and almost large parts of the country are already covered. In another 12 months or so, every farmer in the country will have a soil health card. That will help him plan his produce better, plan his cropping pattern better, as well as ensure that he doesn't waste fertilizer or water and damage the soil quality. In terms of electricity, from a period of perennial shortages, today this country has sufficient electricity, and we are in a comfortable situation of surplus electricity. So farmers will get adequate water to provide adequate electricity to provide water to their fields. So we are going in for e-mandis in a big way. The KPMG infrastructure is being upgraded. So it's a several-pronged effort to up the incomes of the farmers and ensure they get a fair price for their produce. They're able to get better output in their farms. They're able to get better products which have a better value in the market. For example, pulses production has grown manifold in the last 2 or 3 years. Cotton farming has increased. The sugarcane farmers are getting a better value for their produce. All in all, we are very confident that the farmers are moving towards doubling their income in the next 5 years.
Sure. You know, I'm just going to get you back and rewind to the economic survey that took place yesterday, and the CEA had hinted and indicated that there would be a rollout of quite a disruptive reform, which is the Universal Basic Income Scheme, and they would get rid of all the subsidies which are being given to the BTL populace of the country as well. But no such indication at all was made by the Finance Minister in today's budget session. Do you think going forward in the year to come, we would see some sort of signs of this kind of a reform taking place, and the social security norms in the country would tighten up by getting rid of the SOPs?
Madam, the Chief Economic Advisor in his economic survey is expected to throw new ideas, new prospective possibilities to further improve the economic climate. I respect and welcome such ideas from the Chief Economic Advisor, and I'm sure this will open up for debate, for discussion, for a public discourse on this subject, and all the various aspects of this will be considered and looked at both by the government and by the people at large and economists to see how this can be a possible reform in the future. We have already introduced direct benefit transfer in a big way. The government has helped save nearly 36,000 crores of leakages through the DBT. I'm sure such path-breaking ideas are very much welcome and should be debated for potential future use. The Chief Economic Advisor only gave this idea yesterday in the economic survey, so obviously it couldn't be a part of today's budget.
Mr. Goyal, what we saw out of this budget today was transform, energize and clean India, certainly to increase better governance. We wish you good luck in the next year as you, run the country's budget forward and you implement it. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelkar, for joining us as well. Thank you, Amarjeet, and thank you, Kamal. It's been a pleasure having you. Our discussion will continue. We will be talking more about sectors as we go forward from our 9 to 10 p.m. broadcast. So stay with us after the break.